The royal palace was filled with music, laughter, and the glitter of gold. Noble families from every kingdom dreamed of seeing one thing happen: the beautiful Princess Isabella choosing her future husband. She was admired throughout the land. Her beauty was legendary. Her gown sparkled with precious gems, and wherever she walked, people bowed with respect. But behind her beautiful smile was a heart full of pride. Princess Isabella believed no man was worthy of her. King Edward, her father, loved his daughter dearly, but one thing broke his heart. Every prince, duke, nobleman, and wealthy gentleman who came to ask for her hand left the palace humiliated. One spring morning, the grand hall was decorated with flowers as princes from distant kingdoms gathered once again. The king stood proudly beside his daughter. "Dear Isabella," he said warmly, "today you shall meet some of the finest young men in all the kingdoms." First Prince stepped forward. He was brave, kind, and respected by his people. Before he could even introduce himself, Isabella burst into laughter. "Oh dear," she said loudly enough for everyone to hear. "Did no one tell you how round you are? You look more like a barrel than a prince." The hall became silent. The prince lowered his head and quietly stepped away. The second nobleman approached. He was handsome and incredibly wealthy. Isabella looked at him from head to toe. "Your ears stick out like sails," she laughed. "Perhaps the wind carries you instead of your horse." More uncomfortable silence filled the room. The third prince bowed politely. He was known for his wisdom and generosity. Princess Isabella leaned toward her ladies and whispered loudly enough for everyone to hear. "Look at that nose. It's far too small. How can anyone take such a tiny nose seriously?" Several guests looked down at the floor. Among the many princes stood one young ruler named Prince James. He was one of the wealthiest and most powerful princes in the neighboring kingdoms. His people adored him because he ruled with kindness instead of fear. He truly admired Princess Isabella, not only for her beauty but because he hoped there was goodness hidden somewhere inside her heart. As James stepped forward, Isabella examined his face. Then she laughed harder than ever before. "Oh, everyone look. His nose is so tiny it almost disappeared." Some of the guests forced nervous smiles. Prince James simply bowed. "I wish you happiness, princess." King Edward's face had turned red with anger. His daughter insulted every honorable man who entered the palace. That day his patience finally ended. He rose from his throne and struck his staff against the marble floor. The loud sound echoed through the hall. "Enough!" Everyone froze. The king looked directly at his daughter. "You have mocked every good man who has entered this palace. You judge people by their faces instead of their hearts." Isabella rolled her eyes. "Father, don't be so dramatic," the king continued. "I make this promise before everyone gathered here." His voice thundered across the room. "The very next man who enters this palace shall become your husband." The hall exploded with whispers. Princess Isabella laughed. "Surely you're joking." The king looked her straight in the eyes. "I have never been more serious." The next morning, while everyone was still talking about the king's shocking promise, a poor-looking traveler arrived at the palace gates. His clothes were patched. His boots were worn. He carried an old violin over his shoulder. The guards allowed him inside because he wished to perform music for the king. When Isabella saw him, she nearly burst into laughter again. "This ragged musician." "Surely not." King Edward stood. "I gave my word." Within hours, the wedding took place. Princess Isabella cried with anger. She begged her father to change his mind. But the king simply replied, "A promise made by a king cannot be broken." The ceremony, the strange violin player took his new wife away from the palace. Gone were the golden halls, gone were the servants, gone were the silk dresses. They walked for hours until they reached a tiny wooden cottage deep inside a forest. The roof leaked. The furniture was old. There were no servants, no luxury, no comfort. As they walked through valleys and fields, Isabella noticed magnificent forests, rivers, and villages. "Who owns all these beautiful lands?" she asked sadly. Her husband answered, "All of this belongs to Prince James." They continued walking. Soon they passed a great castle shining on a distant hill. "Whose palace is that?" "That also belongs to Prince James." They crossed rich farmland filled with workers. "And these fields, Prince James owns them too." Each answer felt like another stone placed upon Isabella's heart. She remembered laughing at his tiny nose. She remembered humiliating him before everyone. Tears quietly filled her eyes. "I could have lived there." Instead, she entered the little cottage. The next morning, reality began. "There is no servant," her husband said. "You'll prepare breakfast." "I don't know how." "Then you'll learn." She burned the bread, she spoiled the soup, she ruined the laundry, she dropped dishes. She cried many nights from exhaustion. Every mistake taught her something new. Weeks turned into months. Little by little, she learned to cook delicious meals. She learned to clean. She learned to sew torn clothes. She learned to live without servants doing everything for her. Most importantly, she stopped laughing at others. Instead, she began helping neighbors. She became patient, gentle, kind. One evening, her husband returned home. "I've heard Prince James is looking for another kitchen maid in his palace." Isabella lowered her eyes. "Do you think they would accept someone like me? You should try." Next morning, she entered the magnificent palace she once could have called home. No one recognized the former princess. She worked from sunrise until late evening. She chopped vegetables, washed pots, prepared bread, served food. The work was difficult, but she never complained. The proud princess who once mocked everyone had become one of the hardest workers in the palace. Then one exciting day, news spread through every hallway. Prince James was hosting the greatest feast the kingdom had ever seen. Hundreds of guests arrived wearing magnificent clothing. The royal cooks hurried faster than ever. Just before dinner began, the head cook looked at Isabella. "Take these dishes to the king's table." She froze. "Me? Quickly." Her hands trembled as she carefully carried the food through the enormous hall. Music filled the room, candles sparkled everywhere. As she reached the royal table, she lowered her head. Without looking up, she gently placed the dishes before Prince James. Then she bowed deeply. Suddenly, a familiar voice spoke. "Remain." The hall fell silent. Isabella slowly lifted her head. Prince James stood up. He smiled warmly. "My honored guests," looked around the room. "Today I wish to announce that I shall marry." The crowd applauded. Then he stretched out his hand toward Isabella. "And the woman who will become my wife is standing right here," echoed throughout the palace. Everyone stared at the humble kitchen maid. Isabella looked around in confusion. Then Prince James continued. "The poor violin player who married this young woman," he smiled, "was me." The room became completely silent. I wanted to know whether beauty alone ruled her heart. Poured down Isabella's face. She could barely breathe. "I have watched her these past months," Prince James continued. "I have seen her work with humility. I have seen her kindness. I have seen her change. Proud princess has become a woman worthy of respect." Isabella fell to her knees. "Prince James," she sobbed, "I don't deserve your kindness. I laughed at you. I humiliated you. I judged you without knowing your heart." Gently lifted her to her feet. "We all make mistakes. What matters is whether we are willing to change." The guests wiped tears from their eyes. Even King Edward, who had secretly been invited, smiled proudly. His daughter had finally learned the lesson that wealth could never teach. Soon afterward, Prince James and Princess Isabella were married once again, this time not because of a promise, but because of genuine love, respect, and forgiveness. From that day on, Queen Isabella treated every servant, every stranger, every child, and every visitor with kindness. She never mocked another person again. Because she had learned that appearances can deceive, but words can wound forever. Moral of the story: be careful with your words. Never laugh at someone's appearance, weaknesses, or imperfections. You never know who that person truly is, what they have accomplished, or how important they may become in your life. True beauty is found in humility, kindness, and the way we treat others. A single cruel word can create lasting pain, while a kind word can change someone's life forever. If this story touched your heart, don't forget to like this video, subscribe to the channel, and share your thoughts in the comments. Have you ever seen someone judged unfairly because of their appearance? We'd love to read your story below.